welcome to another 42 Courses podcast. I am ridiculously delighted today to be chatting to someone I admire greatly, Sir Lord my captain, Patrick Colister. I know you could probably do a great intro to yourself, but just for those who don't know Patrick, he's probably one of the most awarded, most wonderful, creative tour de forces in the world. He started up, I think, in were you at DDB at the beginning?
I started at Ogilvy as a copywriter, and then went back 15 years later as the creative director.
Wow. And we'll get into this, but I think you even met and chatted with Dio himself.
Oh yeah.
And then when I met Patrick, he was one of the heads of Google's in-house creative studio in London, doing lots of interesting stuff with Cannes Lions. And the reason why we're chatting today is Patrick is also the chap who runs the Caples Awards, which is, I think, one of the most wonderful things that happens in the creative industry. So we'll get into that in a minute, and you can all learn more about it. There we go. You can't, surely you haven't given yourself an award already.
I've got a box of them.
Okay. So if you're ever feeling like you need an ego boost, call Patrick. He can maybe send you.
It is an interesting thing. I've got a whole load of these, which I've been trying to sell, but of course, gold winners don't ever want to buy the trophy because they feel no confidence in their genius. But people who win bronze, now I sell a lot of bronzes, because people are just really chuffed to have won something. And there's an insight into human nature there, isn't there?
Definitely. I'm not too sure where do you want to start? Do you want to start with how? I mean, I guess let's start with how on earth did you get started with the Caples Awards? Because it's named after a famous ad man, if I remember rightly. I'd love to hear the origin story.
Well, John Caples was, I suppose, one of the most famous copywriters, but in between the wars.
Right.
So a lot of people will have heard of the ad that was, they laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play ... And one of the reasons it became famous is because it sold a lot of piano lessons. And though it wasn't just about creativity, oh, that's funny, that's clever, whatever, it was really successful. And so in between the wars, of course, advertising was all measurable. It was print. And so people knew what was happening. So de facto, he was a direct marketing copywriter. And as I say, rather amazing guy. During the war, he went into naval intelligence. And I heard from some source that actually he managed to rise to become an admiral. And
Wow.
I don't know many copywriters who've actually got, an admiral's baton in their knapsack, as it were. Anyway, after the war, he went back to BBDO, where he was creative director. And in fact, he was the creative director of BBDO well into his 80s. And the only thing that forced him to retire was he fell off a ladder. Anyway, somewhere in all of that, a young woman called Andy Emerson worked for him at BBDO. When he passed on, and her own career as a writer was, I suppose, coming to an end, she started the Caples Awards in his name to honour him as an individual and as talent and direct marketing. So she started the Caples Awards in 1978. And if you cast your mind back to the dawn of direct marketing, if you look at the 80s and 90s, I mean, most direct marketing shows, the work was just horrific. I mean, it was just awful, but it seemed to work. And that's what happened. You would just, juries gave awards to bloody numbers. And so she started the Caples in order to honour the creative people rather than the agencies as much as anything. And So that's the backstory. Anyway, Andy passed on in around 2005, I think. And she left it in trust to a group of creative directors who then didn't know what to do, because we're creative directors, for God's sake. We can't run anything. No. So they gave it to Haymarket, and Haymarket ran it for a bit. But to be honest, they didn't really like it very much. I mean, direct marketing was, and still is, regarded by some as being a bit tacky. They had a flagship publication called DM News, and they didn't like that much either. Right. So they got rid of them both. And so in 2017, I got a phone call from one of Andy Emerson's trusted lieutenants, a creative director called Duncan Gray. He just rang up to say, the Caples is folding. Isn't that sad? And I went, oh! So I got on to Haymarket and I bought it. And we've been running it ever since. And of course, direct marketing has changed, because now, thanks to digital media, a click, a like, let's say, 70% of communication now is direct in one sort or another. And we've watched this amazing reversal in the advertising business. I mean, when I was running a direct marketing agency, people used to cross the street to avoid me. And occasionally, if I met them at parties, they would look at me with kind of brown eyes brimming with tears. Patrick, what's happening? Because, honestly, Chris, our industry, certainly in the UK, reflects our obsession with class. In those days, if you did TV advertising, you were one of the aristocrats. And you went to the Zanzibar or the Groucho Club and you drank extremely well. If you were digital, ducking, diving, dodging the dip, you were middle class. Do you know what I mean? I'll come out and go, I'm doing all right. One day I might even make it to the end. And then below the line, below the salt, below everything, you had the people who did the folding shit. And we've watched all of that change. And now, wonderful, wonderful creative directors like Emma Delafosse and Charlie Wilson and all who've come out, and Steve Aldridge, of course, Nicky Bullard, all of them have come out of direct marketing. But they are business-oriented. They are more widely read than a lot of advertising creative directors, dare I say it, who won't thank me for this. But seriously, it's creative directors who've got a wider cultural appreciation than the last Nike ad. That's why you and I, Chris, there's marvelous. You read books, and actually, that's amazing these days. And so anyway, so I bought the Caples, and that was that we had our first London-based Caples Awards in 2018. And right now, if you can hear my computer pinging, it is pinging because we close for entries in 2023 the day after tomorrow. At least we close for free entries the day after tomorrow. So
it's the 1st of April, right?
Yeah. No, we close on the 31st of March at 11:59 p.m.
Right. Good to know. And it was interesting what you were saying about class there, because when, class in advertising, and it's a whole different story to go down. But I think that one of the reasons why I so admire the Caples is in my head, it's a great way to democratize awards. For most people who enter, it's free to enter, and you still will have your work judged by the sort of similar caliber, often the same caliber of judges that judge Clio's or One Show or even Cannes, and the other places as well. So I remember when I first learned about it, it was always pitched to me as an incredible place to to share your work and see and discover work from maybe lesser known agencies that perhaps don't have the budgets to be able to enter their work into the large awards places, but also, more selfishly, as a way to dip test the work and see whether you should bother entering it into the big award shows. But everyone I've met who's ever, whenever I've been lucky enough and you've been kind enough to invite me to the awards last year, anyone who I've ever met and talked with about the Caples, they've always universally absolutely loved it. And I think there is this kind of lovely camaraderie about it. And so firstly, just thank you for even making it an existence. I think anything that democratizes creativity and the work and as you say, especially trying to recognize individuals, not just the big agency holding companies, is a marvelous thing to do. So thank you. Well done.
Well, thank you. I can't pretend it's been easy. But the judges, we have really great judges, chief creative officers from top agencies. This year I'm really thrilled. We've got Wolfie, Stephen DeWolf, who is the DDB guru across APAC. I've got 50 judges assembled from around the world, and every single one of them is somebody I admire and respect. And it's one of the things, if you're going to submit your work, you really want people to judge it who've been there, done it, and who you admire. So there's one of the reasons they really enjoy it, I have to say, is, I think there are two things. First of all, they're not herded like sheep. I've been a judge at international award shows before. You get corralled. And we definitely try not to do that. When we were able to do it in person, for example, the very first year we did it in Laura Gregory's pub, Great Ones. And
it's a great place to do any judge.
But it feels right for creativity. But the second thing is, we've never had a big dinner because that's the tail wagging the dog. If you're a big international awards show, you make money out of the dinner. So it's incumbent on you to sell as many tickets as you possibly can. That means you have as many categories as you possibly can, and subcategories. And it also means you have gold, silver, and bronze in each category. So you'll go along to an award show, and there will be some terrible dross winning awards because the jury are made to give it gongs. And they don't like that at all. And so the Caples, we have no dinner, which means that we don't have a plethora of categories. We have only 13. And it also means the jury is completely free to give as many or as few categories as they want. And that freedom also, I think, is an intellectual freedom, because it then means that they judge the work in a slightly different way. And by and large, I have to say that most Caples juries are really generous. I've been in Cannes juries in the past where people have sat there and just condemning the work as shit. And, the point is, nobody goes to work in the morning going, I'm going to do something really shitty today. We all think we're doing our best, and there's always something of merit to be. And that's what I really like about the Caples, that all of our jury presidents have asked the jury to look out for the small but interesting piece of work. It doesn't have to be the massive budget bit. And the jurors are really supportive of the creative community.
How do you filter through all the work? So I'd imagine you get quite a lot of entries. How do the judges have to filter through all of them, or is there a sort of almost a pre-process where you can try and do some of that with a smaller team so that the judging can?
No, I have thought about pre-judging. But then I thought that was a bit unfair.
Right.
Because, one of the things that I'm trying to do this year, and it's part of Laura's agenda as well, Laura Jordan Bambach. Laura's come from a really fascinating background. She's worked for some really small companies before ending up now as the president of the Grey Beer Moth. But we're really supportive of small design studios and agencies. So if we're asking small businesses to upload their work and share it with us, then you've got to be kind to it. You've got to be generous about it. And so that's this year's agenda. But it also means that, some of the work doesn't have the budgets, it doesn't have the gloss. And so the jury will look through that and vote for just great ideas. So no, we don't have a prejudging jury to weed out the shit, as somebody might put it.
What are some of the things that do you have a sort of a checklist of stuff that you give to the jury members, or is that depending on who's the sort of head honcho in the room at the time?
Yeah, it is. I mean, but by and large, the jury presidents we've had have got pretty much the same sort of agenda.
Right.
I guess it's no accident that 4 of our presidents have all come from, if you like, direct marketing backgrounds. And I suppose my brief to all of them is, let us honor work that sells stuff, because as creative people, we all know how bloody difficult it is to get someone to open a wallet, to write a check, to do that. And I don't think we compete with Cannes at all. And I've got nothing but admiration, by the way, for Cannes and the way it's run and so forth. But, last year out of 32 Grand Prix, only 6 had any kind of discernible commercial purpose. And so part of my brief, I suppose, to the president of the jury is, look, let's honor work that sells stuff, because I think advertising's primary purpose is to do that. And by the way, it is in an honorable estate. And by the way, it's purposeful. Do you know what I mean? And so you've got to do good stuff to make good business these days. It's just de facto. So, but selling stuff is, yeah.
It's a tricky one. I mean, we always, with 42 courses, we're always, obviously we have some designers and creative people who work with us in house, and there's a big difference between artistic creativity and commercial creativity. I think there is a bit of an overlap, but finding people who are good at commercial creativity is very much a niche. It's much trickier than most people think. But I mean, what are some of the sort of highlights of some of the things that you found over the years of looking at the Caples? Are there any kind of things that you always look out for, or great piece of work that just have stood out and really bowled you over and knocked you out?
Yes. But it's also why a lot of jurors love judging it.
Right.
Because the Caples used to be the first global award show of the year.
Right.
I've noticed other award shows are getting earlier and earlier now, but they all used to be back-ended. So we were the first show at which you would see the New Year's crop of work, if you see what I mean.
Right.
Also, being a month before Cannes, jurors got to see what was going to be entered in what was at Cannes a month later and early.
Right.
So, I mean, Ben Mouge was our president last year, and that he absolutely loved being able to see work for the first time he'd never seen before, and then being a month later able to talk about it knowledgeably in Cannes and impress his friends.
Nice.
As it were. But the joy of being a judge on any jury actually is that when you see something you've never seen before, and it's good. That's tremendous.
Have you been able to peek at any of the entries in this year so far?
Oh God, yeah, of course. No, because I'm processing anything over 25 MB has to be sent via a file transferring service.
Right.
So I've been looking at a lot of those. Yeah, I have. I'm seeing a couple of things that if they don't win gold, then next year I don't know where I'll go for a jury.
But have you seen some trends? Have you seen? I mean, if I look at Cannes last year, there was sort of all the conversations were all around metaverse. I think it's fairly. I don't think it takes a genius to know that this year I'm imagining it's all going to be around machine learning and AI. And so I don't.
I mean, your advertising awards are out of sync by at least anything up to a year.
Right.
So there's a little bit of AI coming through,
right?
But not as much as there will be next year.
I think because I guess it's only in the last months that it's sort of
exactly that. But there is some. I was looking at something only earlier today that was. Well, no, actually, there's a bit more than that. I can think of about 5 or 6 entries that use generative AI in different.
Any that you're allowed to share? Like, maybe you can pretend that you didn't see them in the judging, and instead you just found out.
Well, because I am interested in all of this, my lovely friend Trevor Chambers did ask Mid-Journey to redesign the Caples Award. It's just bloody funny. Oh, dear, oh me. I remember what do you think an advertising award should look like? It's hilarious.
Was it anything recognisable?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not sure. I'm on.
Nick, listening to this on the podcast. They have to describe it.
They're hideous gold contortions.
Right. Okay.
But
abstract.
But yes, but what's funny about it is what machine learning thinks an advertising award is.
Right.
Another garish, in your face, absurd. Do you know what I mean? We didn't come out of this at all well.
Well, I'm sure. I don't know. I mean, I think it's. I'm an optimist, but I think it's going to be a great sort of another great tool to be able to shortcut a lot of stuff.
Oh, without any shadow of doubt. Hang on. I'm just sending it to you.
Thanks. But so when are the awards? When does the judging take place this year? Is it all sort of is the final stuff in April?
We're free to enter until March 31st, and then we charge. And the reason is, honestly, this is run on a shoestring, and we get a little bit of money from Mark Reed at WPP. You know, honestly, he is a great man, and we love him to pieces here. And we also get money from BBDO, and again, Andrew Robertson has been a fantastic supporter of the Caples, actually. And so angels sing his name in 4-part harmony. And if it wasn't for them, then the Caples wouldn't exist.
Right.
But we have to charge, because, I mean, the last time we did pay for entries, get people to pay for entries, which was 2019, 40% of all of our entries came after the closing date.
Right.
After the closing time. And then we only had 4 days to prepare it for the judges. And so people leave it to the last possible bloody moment. So it's already happening. I'm getting loads of emails from people saying, can we send stuff next week? And I go, well, yeah, the reason we charge you for late entries is because it costs us money. And since we haven't bloody got any, because all of the overtime costs for the techies, putting all of this into the platform, it's time consuming.
I'd imagine it's
uploaded and then re-uploaded in a format. And I have to say, Warwick Lester is our techie, and he is bloody brilliant. Honestly, the platform he's created really is a model for all award shows around the world. I mean, I don't mind another award show talking to him, because it makes life for the jury so much easier, because they can go in and judge a bit and then go out. They can see their scores. They can go back and change their scores. And that's the fundamental bit. I keep the rankings
Right.
from the first day of the jury discussions through to the last day. It is just amazing how they change as a result of the conversations. And that's the other thing about the Caples and why judges love doing it, because the discussions are free and frank and fearless. And, I mean, whatever you think about it, last year, Hope Reef from AMV in 70 was a classic Abermead Vickers campaign. Not just a video and a stunt, but behind it a typeface and the cleverness of getting the YouTube video to generate cash that would then go back to it was a really tight bit of work and a really good piece of thinking. But one of the jury, an Australian, said, we cannot give this a gold. It's because it's all about a tiny patch of an Indonesian reef when 98% of the Great Barrier Reef is at risk. This is really, a small beer in actually a global catastrophe. And it really upset him. Right. And a little group of people were what he thought taking advantage of it. So it got downgraded. I feel really sorry for the Abermead Vickers people, but I don't suppose they mind too much because they picked up 3 golds for it at Cannes a month later. But that's exactly the sort of stuff that happens in the Caples. People talk to each other and then absolutely, out of sympathy for the Great Barrier Reef, I'm afraid Hope Reef only made a silver. But there you go.
What are some? I mean, there's a lot of people listening, and probably people who do enter awards like this. I mean, do you have any sort of advice and suggestions on how to? Because I'd imagine crafting a case study is a skill within itself. Are there any things that you recommend? I guess there's a whole load of questions I would have. It's like, how do I know when to enter or not to enter? So there's a processing myself, and then when I do enter, how do I set it up so that it's got the best chance of success with a jury? Because whether it's the Caples jury or a Lions jury or a Clio's jury, they're all often very similar people, or sometimes even the same person. So I think knowing it for one is helpful for a lot of the others.
Well, the first thing I'd say is the award submission needs to be written by somebody who can write. And so Steve Harrison built an extremely successful agency and became the most awarded direct marketing creative director of his generation because he wrote every single awards entry himself. So also you can tell when the award submission has been put together by a PR agency because it just uses woolly language.
Right.
The second thing I'd say is quite often you need an idea about the idea,
right,
and in order to be able to present it. The third thing is don't write it. The video is the crucial part of this. Don't write the video like a TV commercial, with suspense build up and then a surprise reveal at the end. It drives judges crazy. It makes me laugh, I have to say. The really skilled writers of TV commercials just bloody hate it when they get confronted with that structure themselves. What they want to know is at the very beginning of the video what the problem was, what the solution was, and then you can amplify that and then go into the results. But actually it's tell the story quickly, amplify it, give me the results, get out of there. An awful lot of them are quite flaccid, but then you can take it to extremes. There was one Brazilian agency who had an absolutely rather amazing idea for a fruit juice. What they did is they took molds and they clamped them onto orange and lime trees in the beginning of the year, so that when the fruit grew, it grew inside these molds. And the molds were the shape of the little fruit drink cartons that the brand sold in. So now they had limes and oranges that were square, but with the brand name on it, Jif or whatever it was. And then they took these and they put them in the fresh fruit section of supermarkets.
Wow.
Thus driving, so took time and ingenuity and all the rest of it. Anyway, their Cannes Awards submission entry was sung to the tune of Old MacDonald Had a Farm. And they entered their awards submission video into Cannes for best use of music, and as a piece of creative work in its own right.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So
just to summarize that, it was make sure you have an idea behind the idea. Make sure the case study isn't necessarily told as a standard three-act story, and it's instead is shown as a clear problem, solution, result.
Problem solution, background, idea, and then results. But
and the first one was I couldn't remember what the first one was.
Make sure somebody who can write, right? So.
Yes. Oh, yes. He's a good writer. And if you don't have one, ask Steve Harrison, because he was very successful at it. Or take the copywriting course on Body Do courses, because that was written by Steve Harrison.
No, right. Yeah. But I mean, you can tell which agencies take it seriously and which don't. So the ones that do put a lot of time and effort into it. There's another thing. I mean, for example, the categories are very different to each other. So, for example, I don't know, a piece of work could be absolutely an app that enables your phone to start doing marvelous things. So you can enter it for digital, and you can enter it into mobile. The really smart operators slightly tweak the case study so that it makes more sense in the mobile category, because it talks about how it works and all the rest of it. Again, lazy agencies just do a generic entry and then spray it out into all the categories.
And doing a video case study, is that kind of necessary? Do you think, if you really want it to go far?
Yeah. But I mean, I have to say, I think it's completely necessary, not just to enter into the awards, because most awards schemes want a video. In fact, I think Cannes mandates it now.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, as a creative person, it's really good for your portfolio.
Right.
Especially as campaigns get slightly more complicated. If you've just a TV ad or a print ad, fair enough. But sometimes if it's an integrated campaign, then it needs explanation. The other thing is that, quite often a campaign, as it rolls out into different media, has different functionalities. And so it's kind of good to talk about those and how they work together.
With the categories, have you found those over the years sometimes get quite hard to define? So, I mean, we were putting together a sort of PR course at the moment, and we just found actually a lot of it is really, modern day PR. A lot of it seems to be experiential advertising. So how do you, have you had to edit those over the years yourself? Or?
Well, I've experimented a bit. PR is really fascinating. PR has grown like topsy. And in fact, during the recession, when advertising agencies were jettisoning staff, PR agencies had a very small decline before then a big recruitment drive. And let's face it, I mean, when you read the award submissions, I'd say 90% of them, as a measurable response, talk about media impressions. In other words, it's all PR. And in fact, I'd say 90% of the work only exists thanks to the oxygen given it by digital PR. So PR itself has grown as a category enormously, and you can see why. But it's also becoming, and is very, very important as an advertising medium, because it includes influencer marketing and native advertising and so forth. But I guess the things I've noticed, I used to have a relationship with Royal Mail, but There's not hardly any direct mail.
Right.
At least agencies aren't doing it. Mailing houses are, but there's hardly any direct mail. B2B, I had two B2B categories. One was digital and one was just other media, but I've conflated those. Yeah, it's still relatively small.
That's odd. Do you think is that just because you think it's harder to sort of package a sexy case study for a B2B piece of B2B work?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think a lot of B2B agencies don't think that they have the big glossy video production.
Right.
And so you feel a little inhibited to work sometimes because it feels very, dare I say it, workmanlike. So, yeah, there's that lack of confidence, perhaps. And again, I mean, one of the things about the Caples jury, I do try and find people to judge categories who have sympathy for that category or empathy, I mean. And, but I mean, this year, Duncan really wanted a new category, which is new product launch or service, new product. That hasn't been terribly well subscribed to. And I guess one of the reasons for that is that most new product launches are failures. I mean, I think something like 83% of all new product launches don't work.
Right.
But we're doing it. We're experimenting. The self-promotion. I deliberately did self-promotion because agencies are really bad at advertising themselves. And it's Simon Sinek who said, look, if agencies can't advertise themselves, then what hope have they got for doing anything for their clients? But I did think that a lot of small agencies do really clever things in terms of their moving cards or Christmas cards, all of which is really important collateral selling your creativity. So we haven't had very much in that, but that was really, and I've been appealing to individual freelance writers, art directors. Come on, this is a category for you deliberately.
Yeah.
Anyway, it hasn't got much in it, alas.
That's a marvelous thing. I mean, I know, is it Gasp? I think the local UK agency. They do some great self-promotion work. Love it.
They should be bloody entering the Caples.
I'll give them a call afterwards and tell them. But I mean, talking about sort of B2B stuff, did you? I know it's not necessarily as relevant here. So, I mean, the Caples is really for creatives by creatives, but do you have people from client side often on the juries, or are you finding that's becoming more of a thing? So I'd imagine there are a lot of sort of in-house creative agencies now who use agencies, but maybe a little less than they used to. So have you found that becoming more of a thing?
Or in-house agencies, or
just or finding on whether it's in the Caples or not. Like I've definitely seemed to have mentioned and found in the last few years more people from the actual brands ending up on juries, which I think is an interesting
thing. We've got Jeanette Bonet this year, who is she works for Amazon Prime in Germany, but before that was a creative director at BBDO in Dusseldorf. We've had John Wicks, who's a creative director at Lego in the UK, and
we've very jealous of that job.
What?
Yeah, very jealous of that job.
Well,
I'm surrounded by Lego
very recently, and they tell me it is the most loved brand in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, but of course, I mean, you know what? A huge level of responsibility for the creative people there. You bring everything in-house, and it's been incredibly successful. I think I'm right in saying they've grown their business 70% in the last 5 years.
Yes.
So something's going right there. But honestly, the pressure to be able to maintain that now suddenly it's very different. But So we've had Trevor Chambers, who's the creative director of Kindred TSBs. I've got several in-house jurors this year. And they bring a different perspective. It's much more business focused. A lot of creative people in agencies do work, and of course they're interested in how well it does. But actually, when you're in-house, it's kind of fundamental to what you do next.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, I look, I love absolutely everything you're doing, and I hope that anyone who's listening goes on. And is it just caples.org? Okay, there we go.
Caples.org. I suppose we close for free entries at midnight on Friday. But, the following 2 weeks, we charge 350 quid per campaign. But you can enter a campaign into 4 categories, and that's £87.50, which is still cheaper than any other international award show by a country mile. And if anyone does enter after April the 1st, what they're doing is giving us the lifeline to survival next year.
I highly recommend it. I mean, it's also just wonderful to see the work that comes out of that and the awards and the things that are awarded. So, do you know? Have you got the date penciled in for when the awards results are?
Well, yes, we're doing at the moment May the 23rd, Tuesday, May the 23rd, and I'm taking over a pub. At least I do, but the Saatchi's pub, the Pregnant Man.
Brilliant.
So very appropriate, and it should be really, really good fun. Chris, you're getting your invitation.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, I hope I get the nod this year. So, thank you. Like, thank you just so much again. I mean, I think you're remarkable in so many ways, Patrick. It's very rare that you meet someone who has been at the top of their game for so many years and managed to stay there. I don't know many people like you, and I mean that in the greatest compliment that I can. It's whenever we have a chat, there's always something new I learned and something amazing that you share with me that I wish I had known years ago. So thank you very much for your kindness and for your kindness to the industry as a whole. I think if there were more people who helped the creative industry, often really out of the kindness of your heart, for by and large, the world would be a much better place. So thank you for everything that you do for as long. Really, really appreciate it.
All right, already. But I do love this crazy business. I love how it's changing. I love the way it's stretching, and but I also believe in it. One day, if they do put up the barricades and tear down capitalism, fine. But up until then, I think what we do is we play an important part in helping companies make better products and sell them at a better price. And without anyone noticing it, over the last 100 years, the world has changed. And we had a role to play in that.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess our hope is that we can have a positive role to play, which I think is, and we see that in a lot of the work that we see nowadays, and particularly in the award shows, is I think people get that now more than they did.
My analysis of Cannes last year was that there was an awful lot of work there with corporate social responsibility at its heart. And I began to think that actually this is more important than marketing. But, that it's beginning to happen. You're beginning to see a seismic change in company boardrooms. So it isn't just a CMO with an agenda. And I think that's what, Steve Harrison's crusade is about. He's very hostile to CMOs who've got slightly left of center agendas, but those companies where at a board level, where you've got the CFO and the CEO signing up to better ways of doing business then we all benefit from that. And then, marketing and advertising as a role to play. And it's so interesting. I mean, honestly, my lips are sealed, but I've been looking only this morning at a couple of really seriously interesting case studies in this very area. And it is, it's just fascinating how an awards show can open a little window actually into societal change.
100%. Well, so everyone needs to go to caples.org, get your entry in now, and if you're listening to this and it's past the free date, don't worry, the money will be going to a good cause. It'll make sure that this whole adventure can carry on. But thank you so much for taking time, Patrick, to chat. Really, really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing him in person hopefully very soon.
Thank you. You're the nicest man in the world, Chris.
Nonsense.
Thank you.
Thanks.